New York, Radio City Music Hall, 2021. In the dressing room, a 96-year-old man stares at the mirror, his eyes empty, lost. "Tony, you're on in 5 minutes," says his wife Susan. Tony, confused. "On? Am I a performer?" "Yes, sweetheart." "You're Tony Bennett, and tonight 3,500 people are watching you." Tony's voice trembles. I can't remember the songs." Susan holds his hand. "You'll remember when the music starts." "You always do." A knock on the door. Lady Gaga walks in. "Ready, Tony?" Tony looks at her. 5 seconds of silence. "Who are you?" Gaga's eyes fill with tears. "I'm Stefani, Tony, your little Italian girl." Tony smiles. "Oh yes, Gaga, I love you." For seconds later, Tony asks again, "Are we doing something tonight?" This is exactly when the door opens. 500 people standing, applauding, crying. Tony walks on stage, confused, scared. The music starts, and then Tony Bennett begins singing perfectly, every note right, every word in place. A man who forgot his own name remembers the song he's sung since 1952. How is this possible? Have you ever wondered? How does Alzheimer's take everything from a person but not their music? Today I'm going to tell you Tony Bennett's story. One of the world's greatest singers' 7-year battle with Alzheimer's, his final farewell tour with Lady Gaga, and a miracle that science still cannot explain. Wait a minute. Don't miss this detail. July 21st, 2023, time 10:04 a.m. Tony Bennett took his last breath. He was 96 years old, but the truth is Tony had started dying 7 years earlier. In 2016, when he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's for 7 years, his wife Susan watched the man she loved disappear. But the singer stayed until the very end. Music was the last thing to leave Tony Bennett, but the real story started much earlier. In 1926 in Queens, August 3, 1926. Astoria, Queens, New York. Anthony Dominic Benedetto was born into poverty during the Depression. His father John was a grocer. His mother Anna was a seamstress. Italian immigrants, poor but proud. Little Anthony loved 2 things, drawing and singing. At age 10, tragedy struck. His father died. The family was devastated. Financially destroyed, Anthony had to work, selling newspapers, running errands, anything to help his mother. But he never stopped singing. But what they didn't know yet, young Anthony would sing on street corners for tips. His voice, even at 13, was remarkable. Clear, pure, emotional. People stopped, listened, threw coins. "Kid, you got something special," an old man told him once. "Don't waste it." Anthony never did. This is exactly where everything changed. 1944, Anthony was 18. World War II was raging. He was drafted, sent to Europe, fought in the Battle of the Bulge. He saw death, horror. Friends killed beside him, but in his downtime, Anthony sang for the troops. In bombed-out buildings, anywhere, music kept him alive, mentally, emotionally. When he returned to America in 1946, Anthony knew music was his destiny. He enrolled in the American Theater wing using the GI Bill, studied bel canto singing technique, but his real education came in the clubs. You haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. 1949, Anthony was performing at a club in Greenwich Village under the name Joe Barry. In the audience, Bob Hope. After the show, Hope came backstage. "Kid, you're good, but that name terrible. What's your real name?" "Anthony Benedetto, sir." Hope thought for a moment. "Too long." "Tony Bennett, that's your name now." And just like that, Anthony Dominic Benedetto became Tony Bennett, 1950s. Tony Bennett's rise was steady. Columbia Records signed him in 1950. His first hit, "Because of You," 1951. Number 1 for 10 weeks, then came Rags to Riches, 1953. Another number 1. Stranger in Paradise, 1953, top 10. Tony was becoming a star, but the 1950s belonged to rock and roll. Elvis, Chuck Berry, traditional pop singers were struggling. Wait a minute. Don't miss this detail. 1962, Tony was performing in San Francisco at the Fairmont Hotel. An unknown songwriter, George Corey, had written a song. "I left my heart in San Francisco." He gave it to Tony. "Will you sing this?" Tony almost said no. "I have enough songs." But something made him try it. Once he sang it that night. The audience went wild. Tony recorded it, released it in 1962. The song changed everything. I Left My Heart in San Francisco became the Tony Bennett song, his signature, his identity. Grammy Awards, one hit, immortality. At 36, Tony Bennett was a legend. But what's really shocking, the 1960s-70s were brutal for traditional singers. Rock dominated. The Beatles, Rolling Stones. Tony's style was old. Columbia Records dropped him in 1972. You're not relevant anymore. Tony struggled. Drugs, bad business decisions. Near bankruptcy, 99. Tony's son Danny took over as his manager. Dad, we're going back to basics. Jazz standards, small clubs, no compromises. It worked. This is exactly where everything changed. 1990s, Tony Bennett Renaissance. MTV Unplugged, 1994. Introduced Tony to a new generation. Went platinum. Duets albums, Singing with Everyone. Elton John, Aretha Franklin, Katie Lang, 2006. Duets, an American classic. Massive hit. Or Grammys. Tony in his 70s and 80s was bigger than ever. And then he met Lady Gaga. 2011, Lady Gaga was at her peak. Born This Way tour. Global megastar. But Gaga, real name Stefani Germanotta, grew up loving jazz. Tony Bennett was her hero. They met at a charity event. Gaga was nervous. "Mr. Bennett, I've loved you since I was a little girl." Tony smiled. "Call me Tony, and you have a beautiful voice." Real voice. Not the pop stuff. Your real voice. That conversation changed both their lives. You won't believe this, but 2014, Tony and Gaga released Oh, Cheek to Cheek, jazz standards duet album. Critics were skeptical. An 88-year-old and a pop star? Gimmick? Wrong. The album debuted at #1, won a Grammy, sold over 1 million copies. More importantly, Tony and Gaga became family. Gaga called him my best friend. Tony called her my little Italian girl. They toured together. Cheek to Cheek tour, 2014 to 2015. Sold out everywhere. What you're seeing now is nothing. But during rehearsals, Gaga started noticing things. Tony would forget lyrics. Stop mid-song. What comes next? His tour manager would whisper the words. Tony would smile, nod, continue. At first, everyone thought he's 88, normal aging. But it was more than that. 2016, Tony was 90 years old. Still performing, still sharp, mostly. But Susan Crowe, Tony's third wife, married since 2007, was worried. Tony would repeat stories, forget recent conversations, get confused about schedules. She took him to a neurologist, tests, MRIs, cognitive assessments. This is exactly where everything changed. The diagnosis, Alzheimer's disease. Early to moderate stage, Susan's world stopped. The doctor explained, he's 90, the disease is progressing, but slowly. He might have several good years left. Susan asked the question she dreaded. Will he be able to sing? The doctor paused. Music memory is different. It's possible he'll retain that longer than other memories. But eventually, no guarantees. Susan made a decision, keep it private. For now. But what's really shocking, for the next 4 years, 2016-2020, Tony Bennett continued performing. Over 100 concerts, tours, recording sessions. Nobody in the public knew he had Alzheimer's. Susan and Danny, Tony's son manager, created a system. Rehearse more intensely before shows. Teleprompters with lyrics disguised as stage monitors. Keep set lists familiar. Have musicians ready to cover if Tony forgot. And it worked. Tony would forget what city he was in. But when the music started, perfect, the muscle memory, the training, the 70 years of performing, Alzheimer's couldn't touch that. Yet you haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. 2020, the pandemic hit. All touring stopped. For Tony, this was devastating. Without performances, without routine, without music. He declined rapidly. Susan watched helplessly as Tony forgot more and more. Days when he didn't recognize his own apartment. Days when he asked, "Who are you?" to Susan. Days when he stared at his platinum records with no recognition. But then Susan would play his music, and Tony would sing along, every word. February 1st, 2021. AARP magazine published an article. Tony Bennett has Alzheimer's disease. The world was shocked. Tony Bennett has Alzheimer's? The man who just performed in 2019. Susan and Danny decided to go public because they were preparing for Tony's final album release. They wanted to control the narrative. They wanted to help other families. Wait a minute. Don't miss this detail. The article revealed Tony had been diagnosed in 2016, 5 years ago. He'd been performing with Alzheimer's for years. Nobody knew. The response was overwhelming. Messages from fans. Thank you for sharing. Messages from families. My father has this too. Messages from celebrities. Tributes, love, respect. But the biggest response came from Lady Gaga. She tweeted, "I love you, Tony. We're going to do one more thing together. One more album. One more show." And they did. 2021, Tony Bennett and Lady Gaga recorded their second duet album, Love for Sale, Cole Porter songs. Recording sessions were difficult. Tony couldn't remember what they'd recorded the day before. Sometimes he'd ask, "Have we done this song?" about a song they'd just recorded. But when the music played, when it was time to sing, you won't believe this, but Tony was perfect. Gaga later said he didn't remember my name some days, but he never missed a note. The producers used every trick. Record multiple takes, guide Tony gently, let him read lyrics if needed, keep sessions short, 2-3 hours max. The album was completed. Released October 1st, 2021. It debuted at number 8 on Billboard. Tony's 60th top 10 album. At 95 years old with Alzheimer's, Tony Bennett was still charting. This is exactly where everything changed. But there was one more thing. One final performance. The last concert, August 3rd, 2021. Tony Bennett's 95th birthday. Radio City Music Hall, New York. One last time. An evening with Tony Bennett and Lady Gaga. 2 nights. Final performances. Ever. What you're seeing now is nothing. Backstage before the first show, Tony was confused. "Susan, where are we?" "Radio City, darling. You're performing tonight." "Performing? What am I singing?" "Your songs, Tony, the standards." Tony looked scared. "I don't know if I remember them." Susan held his hand. "You will. When the music starts, you'll remember." And she was right, you haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. When Tony walked on stage, 3,500 people stood, cheered, cried. They knew. This was goodbye. Gaga came out, hugged Tony. The music started and Tony sang perfectly. "The Lady is a Tramp." "Fly Me to the Moon." "I Get a Kick Out of You." Every note perfect. Every phrasing masterful. Between songs, Tony would turn to the band. "What's next?" They'd tell him. The music would start, and Tony would be back. But what's really shocking, during Smile, Charlie Chaplin's song, Tony's voice cracked. Not from Alzheimer's, from emotion. He knew. Somewhere deep down, he knew. This was the last time. The audience was sobbing. Gaga was crying. The musicians were crying. Tony kept singing the final song, "New York, New York." Tony sang it with every ounce of strength. When he finished, he didn't bow. He just stood there, confused, while thousands screamed his name. Gaga hugged him, whispered something in his ear. Tony smiled. They walked off stage together. Tony Bennett never performed publicly again. After the Radio City concerts, Tony retired completely. He stayed at his Manhattan apartment with Susan. Daily routine: wake up, breakfast, often forgot he'd eaten. Piano room, would sit at piano. Sometimes play, lunch, listen to music, dinner, sleep. Some days were better than others. This is exactly where everything changed. Good days. Tony would recognize Susan, would hum along to his records, would even joke. Bad days, Tony didn't know where he was, who anyone was, would get agitated, but music always reached him. Susan would play "I Left My Heart in San Francisco." Tony would sing along. Every word, perfect pitch. A man who couldn't remember his wife's name could remember every lyric from 1962. You won't believe this, but 2022, Tony's health declined further. He stopped leaving the apartment, needed help with basic tasks. Family and friends visited. Many he didn't recognize, but when they played his music, his face would light up. One day, Lady Gaga visited. Tony didn't recognize her. "Tony, it's Stefani, Gaga, your little Italian girl." Nothing. Then someone played Cheek to Cheek. Tony looked at Gaga and smiled. "I love this song. Who's singing with me?" "You are, Tony, we're singing together." And they did. Right there in his living room. One last duet, Gaga left in tears. Wait a minute, don't miss this detail. 2023, Tony rarely spoke anymore. Mostly silent. His wife Susan read to him, played music, held his hand. Tony's 97th birthday was approaching, August 3rd, 2023, but he wouldn't make it, July 2023. Tony's breathing became labored. His body was failing. Susan called the family. "It's time." Danny, son; Day, daughter; Johanna, daughter; Antonia, daughter, all came. They gathered around Tony's bed. When the door opened, what they saw, July 21st, 2023, Friday morning, 10:04 a.m., Tony Bennett took his last breath. Susan was holding his hand. His children surrounded him. On the record player, softly, "The Way You Look Tonight," Tony's favorite. As he died, his own voice singing filled the room. The last thing Tony Bennett heard was himself singing. Official. Natural causes, complications of Alzheimer's disease, real Alzheimer's, 7 years. But his body was 96. He'd lived a full life. Tony's brain was not donated to science, family decision. But his story taught the world about music and memory. But what's really shocking? Neurologists studied Tony's case extensively. How did he perform with Alzheimer's? Answer: procedural memory. Music learned over 70+ years is stored differently than regular memory, like riding a bike, like typing. The body remembers even when the mind forgets. Tony's voice, his phrasing, his performance, all automatic after 8 decades. Alzheimer's takes recent memory first. Old, deeply learned skills last. That's why Tony could sing perfectly but couldn't remember what day it was. The wife who never left Susan. Crow Bennett married Tony in 2007. She was 40, he was 80. Many said, gold digger. They were wrong. For 16 years, Susan devoted herself to Tony. The last 7 were hell. After Tony died, Susan said, "People ask if I regret marrying him knowing this would happen. Never, not once. Every moment was worth it." She established the Tony Bennett Foundation, music education for children, Alzheimer's awareness initiatives. Susan refused to be bitter. Tony lived 96 amazing years. The last 7 were hard, but they were still ours. Lady Gaga's Love Lady Gaga didn't attend Tony's funeral. Private, family only. But she posted, "I will miss my friend forever. He gave me more than music. He gave me proof that kindness and talent can coexist, that you can be great and humble, that art matters more than fame." Gaga established the Tony Bennett Scholarship at Juilliard School, she said in 2024. "Every time I sing jazz, I hear Tony's voice coaching me. He's still teaching me what Tony changed before." Tony's public disclosure, pre-2021. Performers with Alzheimer's usually retired immediately. Silence and shame surrounded the diagnosis. People didn't understand music-memory connection. After Tony's story, post-2021, understanding that people with Alzheimer's can still create music therapy became more widely accepted. Families learned to use music to reach loved ones. Performing with cognitive decline became less stigmatized. You haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. After Tony's death, music therapy programs exploded worldwide. Tony Bennett Effect, using familiar songs to reach Alzheimer's patients. Nursing homes now have regular sing-along programs, memory. Care facilities use patients' favorite music as therapy, Tony's final gift, showing the world that music is the last thing we lose. What we learned from Tony. Music lives in a different part of the brain. Tony forgot his wife's name but remembered lyrics from 1950. Science now understands why. You can live with dignity while dying. Tony performed until he couldn't, no shame, no hiding, just grace. Love means staying. Susan could have left. She didn't, that's love. Your art can outlive your mind. Tony's voice sang perfect notes while his brain failed. The art was stronger than the disease. Keep performing. Keep creating. Tony didn't quit when diagnosed. He performed 5 more years. Those years mattered. The crooner's final Tony's funeral, July 26, 2023. Private ceremony. Family only. He was buried at Calvary Cemetery, Queens, New York, back where he started. Back in Queens, the epitaph, Anthony Dominic Benedetto, Tony Bennett, 1926-2023. I left my heart in San Francisco and my voice in the world. What you're seeing now is nothing. Today, Tony Bennett's music streams billions of times. New generations discover, I left my heart in San Francisco. His duets with Lady Gaga introduced young people to jazz standards. Who's that old guy singing with Gaga? That's Tony Bennett. And here's his story. Wait a minute. Don't miss this detail. At the 2024 Grammy Awards, a special tribute to Tony Bennett. Lady Gaga performed New York. New York. When she finished, she looked up and said, "That one was for you." Tony, the entire audience stood in silence, then someone started singing, "Start spreading the news," and then another. Then another. Soon the entire Crypto.com arena was singing Tony Bennett's song, thousands of voices. Continuing what Tony started, the voice may have stopped, but the song never will. To the family, Susan Bennett's advice: if your loved one has Alzheimer's, play their music, their favorite songs. You'll see them come back, even if just for 3 minutes. Those 3 minutes are everything. If you're facing Alzheimer's, music therapy is real. Use familiar songs, sing together. The person is still in there. Art and music are the last to go. The final encore. Tony Bennett lived 96 years, performed for 80 years, had Alzheimer's for 7 years. But those 7 years showed the world something miraculous. The disease can take your memory, but it can't take your music. You won't believe this, but in 2024, researchers at UCLA published a study, The Tony Bennett Phenomenon, Music Memory in Alzheimer's Patients. They found patients who engage with familiar music retain cognition 30% longer. Tony Bennett's final performance wasn't just beautiful. It was science. It was hope. It was proof. Rest easy, Tony. The world is still singing your song. Subscribe to Nursing Home. This was Tony Bennett's story. Music, memory, love. Subscribe to Nursing Home channel. Because every singer has a final note. Every legend has a last bow. Every voice eventually quiets. And these stories deserve to be told. Which legend's final chapter do you want next? Comment below. The decision is yours. Because when the music stops, what remains? Tony Bennett gave us the answer, the song. Always the song. Forever the song.